My best friend in the industry was Hollywood's latest it girl. But recently, she became obsessed with dating the heir to the Pierce family empire, desperate to marry into old money. I paid a fortune to buy dirt from the paparazzi on the air, slapped the evidence in front of her face, and told her he was scum. I convinced her to break up with him and stop chasing unrealistic fantasies of marrying a billionaire. She nodded, agreed, and dumped him. Years later, she became an Oscar winner. During her acceptance speech, she stabbed me in the back on national television. My best friend once stole the love of my life. I wanted to die, but now I just want to say one thing. I don't blame her. It's all water under the bridge. Overnight, my reputation was destroyed. I became the homewrecker everyone loved to hate. Her crazy stance sent me death threats daily. Finally, I jumped off a building to prove my innocence, but nobody cared. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day my best friend showed me a photo of her and the Pierce heir. Chloe, he said he wants to marry me. Am I finally going to be a billionaire's wife? My best friend, Tiffany, sat next to me. Her tone was feigned confusion, but her face was flushed with shy excitement. She had tossed her script carelessly at her feet, tapping away on her phone with a smile dancing in her eyes. If this were the past, seeing Tiffany so lovesick would have made me frustrated. I would have lectured her to focus on her career, then analyzed the audition script line by line to help her design a standout performance. But right now, clutching a script covered in notes, my mind was blank. My lips were so dry I couldn't speak. The pain of falling 18 stories, my body shattering like a broken doll, was still vivid in my mind. It was a constant reminder that Tiffany wasn't the innocent girl sitting before me. Seeing me frozen in place, Tiffany huffed, annoyed. Chloe, why aren't you saying anything? Are you jealous? Jealousy won't help. Old money families don't like domineering women like you. My instinct was to tell her how twisted Preston Pierce's social circle actually was. But the moment the words reached my lips, my body involuntarily shuddered. The tragedy of my past life flashed before my eyes. Last time, Tiffany was obsessed with dating Preston, the Prince of Park Avenue, daydreaming about becoming a trophy wife. Right before the movie was set to start filming, she quit. She bailed on the role the agency fought hard to get her, just to attend Preston's secret party. Several burly men had surrounded her, dragging her in front of set-up cameras. She was drugged, flushed, and collapsed on the floor. I had rushed in with a team to save her. I stayed by her side at the hospital and used every connection I had to kill the story in the press. I managed to minimize the fallout, but when she woke up, she only gave me a dismissive sneer. Who asked you to meddle? Preston promised to marry me. That little kink was just part of our foreplay. I saved her from hell, but she thought I was jealous and trying to block her marriage into high society. Later, I bought Preston's dirty laundry from the tabloids. The photos showed he wasn't just sleeping around with men and women, he was involved with minors. As for marrying her, that was just a line he fed everyone. When I threw the evidence in Tiffany's face, she finally gave up her unrealistic dream and broke up with him. I never expected that years later, her repayment would be a public betrayal. Thinking of this, I looked up at Tiffany and clapped my hands hard. Great. That's just great. A gentle, understanding flower like you was born to marry into a dynasty. I curled my lips into a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Hearing this, Tiffany didn't look validated, she looked suspicious. Chloe, do you really think so? Didn't you always tell me to focus on my career because men are unreliable? Why are you suddenly saying I can marry into the family? I stood up quickly, grabbing Tiffany's hands with an eager smile. I just watched a live stream of that massive society wedding, the commoner marrying the billionaire. The $10 million dress, the fairy tale venue, it's so envious. I was originally worried you were being played. After all, Preston might just be talking, not proposing publicly. By the way, remember the bride? It was Jessica, the girl who competed with you back in the day, failed, and became an influencer. If she can marry rich, our Tiffany is so much better. It's definitely not a problem. Tiffany was naturally competitive. She couldn't stand anyone doing better than her, especially someone she considered beneath her. Hearing this, the last trace of suspicion vanished from her face. She flashed a huge grin. Chloe, you're finally making sense. With my looks and body, if I don't marry rich, it's a waste. Who is Jessica anyway? She can't compare to me. Don't worry, Preston will definitely propose to me in public. I nodded repeatedly, agreeing with everything. By the way, Tiff, aren't you going to Preston's party tonight? You need to dress up. Here, I'll send you the info for the spa I go to. Just put it on my card. But this afternoon's audition, you might not make it. Tiffany was floating on cloud 9, convinced she was about to become royalty. She didn't care about the measly acting fee she'd have to work hard for. Fine, it's just a crappy movie anyway. If my agent Lisa hadn't forced me, I wouldn't even be here. Cover for me with Lisa. I'm leaving. She grabbed her limited edition lambskin bag and strutted out of the casting office, casting a contemptuous glance at the other actors waiting in the hall. Without Tiffany's drama, my audition went incredibly smooth. After all, if not for the accident in my past life, the director had originally wanted me for the lead role anyway. I got home at 11 p.m. By now the party should be at its peak. I quickly dialed 911. Beverly Hills, the villa on Mulholland Drive. Illegal gathering. My voice was low and urgent. Immediately after, I contacted several paparazzi, leaking the address and hinting at a massive scandal. Then I called our agent Lisa, sounding panicked. Lisa, Tiffany might be caught up in one of those yachting parties. I heard the paparazzi are already camping out. You need to go handle it. After hanging up, I kept dialing. This time, I called several of Tiffany's biggest fan club leaders. Our girl is being bullied. You guys need to go save her. Call after call, I used a voice changer to switch up my tone until my battery was nearly dead. From company execs to tabloid reporters, I spared no effort to ensure Tiffany became famous across the entire internet tonight. As expected, half an hour later, Twitter servers crashed. Netizens were screaming, "Holy SHD, these rich kids are wild." Thanks to my helpful tips, traffic on social media exploded, far exceeding expectations. Photos of the party spread like a virus. Accounts were getting banned, but new ones popped up to repost the content instantly. One photo, in particular, caused a massive uproar. Tiffany, known for her innocent girl next door image, was wearing heavy, trashy makeup and nothing but a sequined halter top, clinging to Preston Pierce and a few other trust fund babies. Lisa, the agent, arrived at the scene. Seeing Tiffany dressed like an escort, she frowned deeply. "Tiffany, look at yourself. You're disgracing yourself. You are a star, not a call girl." Preston, seemingly feeling this disrespected him, waved his hand and pulled Tiffany into his lap, sneering provocatively. "Where did this old hag come from? Mind your own business. I like my Tiffany just like this." Fans on the scene also stood up for Tiffany, shouting, "Tiffany looks so hot. She's breaking boundaries. She's gorgeous. When is Preston taking her home? She deserves to be a billionaire's wife." Tiffany had been feeling guilty, but hearing the praise, her confidence surged. She straightened her back and rolled her eyes at Lisa. "I'm an adult. I decide my own life. You're not my mother, so back off." Lisa was speechless at her entitlement. Unlike other ruthless agents, Lisa truly treated her artists like her own children. She had protected them from the industry's filth, only for Tiffany to willingly dive into the sewer to climb the social ladder. Lisa wanted to walk away, but after years of working together, she tried one last time. "Come back to the office, apologize, and focus on acting. Stop this nonsense." But Tiffany replied arrogantly, "What is a small entertainment company compared to the Pierce family? I'm going to marry into money. Believe it or not, I'll buy your agency later, and you'll all be begging me for jobs." Lisa was completely silenced. Meanwhile, wearing a hat and mask and wrapped up tight, I was handing out cash to the fans I had hired. That's right. The fans shouting support earlier were actors on my payroll. After all, those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. As for the online comments, I didn't spend a dime. Those were just regular people living for the drama. The innocent flower suddenly changed her style? "Looks like she's working hard to bag the Prince of New York," one comment read. "Preston has always liked the exotic, baddie type." He's just tired of steak and wants a cheeseburger. Is it worth being this pathetic? Does she really think she can marry into the 1%? Most netizens were skeptical and dismissive. Ignoring the online noise, the reporters on the scene were like sharks smelling blood, getting more aggressive by the second. Mr. Pierce, what exactly is your relationship with Tiffany? Whistleblowers claim this party involves illicit transactions. Will you cooperate with the police investigation? A reporter's question hit the bullseye, instantly tensing the atmosphere. Seeing Preston trapped, Tiffany squeezed out a few fake tears for the cameras. No, it's not like that. Preston and I are in a normal relationship. He promised to marry me. This party is actually to celebrate the end of our single lives. Tiffany's voice trembled, and she looked pitifully at Preston, seeking his backup. The crowd started chanting. Propose. Propose. Kiss her. Kiss her. Lisa was signaling frantically from the side, warning her not to be reckless. The Pierce family wasn't someone they could offend. Preston froze. He hadn't expected Tiffany to say that. He realized he was being set up. His father, the head of the Pierce conglomerate, had heard the news and sent the family secretary rushing over. Reporters swarmed the secretary and the couple. Does the Pierce family acknowledge Miss Tiffany as a daughter-in-law? When is the wedding? Will Miss Tiffany retire after marriage? Announcing it this urgently, is she already pregnant? Everyone waited for Preston's answer. The secretary whispered to Preston to play along for now to avoid further scandal. I saw a look of triumph on Tiffany's face. She thought she had won. She knew that even if Preston realized it was a trap, he couldn't tell the truth. If the drugs and transactions inside were exposed, he'd be facing serious prison time. She wanted a public commitment from the Prince of New York. Actually, the two of us. Preston frowned, clearly unwilling to be used. Tiffany grabbed the lifeline, interrupting him. We truly love each other, right, Preston? You're going to marry me, right? Her voice held a plea, but also a threat. The reporters and fans, seeing them lock eyes, started shipping them. Did we misjudge them? Another celebrity billionaire fairy tale. Maybe someone was just jealous and swatted them. Tiffany's eyes were red with excitement. She was ready for the proposal. However, Preston stared at her, his eyes burning with rage. He opened his mouth. You're just a plaything. Did you really think you were somebody? What did you say? Tiffany's face went pale. She stared at Preston in shock, unable to believe he would rather face legal trouble than propose to her. But really, who accepts a threat like that? Preston's voice cut through the noise, cold and sharp. You think you can scheme against me? Tiffany, take a look in the mirror. With your plain Jane face and flat as a board body. I only played with you to try something bland for a change. You actually think you're charming. You don't even look as good as the influencer I hooked up with last week. At least she had tits. Preston wanted to say more, but the police arrived and interrupted him. As he was taken away, he turned his head, his gaze sharp as a knife, filled with warning and menace. It seemed this wasn't over. The consequences waiting for Tiffany were going to be unbearable. The reporters looked at each other. So Tiffany staged this whole thing to force a marriage into a rich family? Flashes and lenses swung toward the new target. I didn't. It's not like that. Tiffany's voice was drowned out. She searched the crowd, her eyes landing on the group of fans by the road. You guys believe me, right? The onlookers looked at each other, then suddenly shouted in unison. We believe you, sister. Tiffany started to show her signature innocent smile, but then they continued. We believe that with your scheming, you'll definitely find a way to trap a rich man. Her smile froze on her face. The online waves crashed higher and higher. I scrolled through news about the Prince of New York's sex party, followed immediately by famous actresses' desperate bid to marry rich. You gotta hand it to Tiffany, she's got guts trying to trap a Pierce, a netizen commented. Fortune favors the bold, but stupidity kills, another replied. I heard she tried to drug him, but he dodged it and she drank it herself. In my past life, I learned later that the drugging incident was also staged by Tiffany. She had secretly contacted reporters to expose the romance, and tried to get pregnant to secure her spot in the family. My unexpected intervention ruined her plan, and Preston, realizing her scheme dumped her. Her later heartbreak and breakup were just an act to guilt-trip me into giving her the movie role. Reborn. There was no way I'd let her get what she wanted. An hour ago, my last anonymous call was to Preston himself. Meanwhile, Tiffany broke down under the flashing lights. Lisa, unable to watch the train wreck, dragged her through the crowd and fled. As for me, I took an Uber home, turned off my phone, and had the best sleep of my life. The next day, I was woken up by Tiffany pounding on my door. "Chloe, lend me some money. I need a boob job." Tiffany seemed traumatized by yesterday's insults. She practically begged. I figured it out. Preston left me because I'm not beautiful enough. I rolled my eyes internally but feigned sympathy. "Tiff, that's a bad idea. Have you heard about botched surgeries? The implants can." I trailed off, letting her imagine the horror. "I just need to go to a top clinic, right?" She interrupted, grasping at straws. "Lend me the money. Once I'm hotter than those Instagram models, Preston will take me back. When I marry into the family, I won't forget you." I stayed silent for a moment, then opened my banking app to show her my empty balance. "How is that possible? You've made millions over the years. Are you lying to me because you don't want to help?" Her voice turned greedy and suspicious. "It's not as glamorous as you think. The agency takes 70%, then taxes, then overhead for my studio. My mom manages whatever is left. You know, I have a brother who knows whose money that really is." I exaggerated, but she guessed right. I just didn't want to lend it to her. Tiffany froze, not expecting this. "I have about $3,000 in my Venmo. I'll send it to you," I said, transferring the meager amount. "That's not enough for anything," she mumbled, dissatisfied. "Actually, you could get an online loan. You said Preston will marry you once you're beautiful. The Pierce family is loaded, you can pay it back easily," I suggested lightly, knowing she was already trapped in her delusion. Tiffany reluctantly took the money and left, deep in thought. With my past life's experience, I was done being a saint. If she wanted plastic surgery, let her. Though this must be the butterfly effect, she never got surgery in the last timeline. Tiffany disappeared for a few days. The online hate grew worse until a week later, she appeared in a live stream interview orchestrated by the company. In the video, her makeup was distressed, eyes red, but carefully styled. Notably, her chest was conspicuously displayed, clearly enhanced. "I was recently diagnosed with severe depression. I don't know why there are rumors, but I'm innocent." She choked up. "I was at the audition yesterday. A senior colleague told me there would be investors at Preston's party. I'm new and I need networking to grow. I thought she was looking out for me." Tiffany's voice grew weak. "I really didn't know the party was actually," she sobbed, unable to finish. She skillfully avoided her scheme to trap Preston and turned the gun on me. Using a new scandal to cover an old one, a trick I taught her. But she learned it wrong. Soon after the stream, netizens identified the senior colleague as me. Before the cyberbullying wave hit, I drove to the agency. I kicked open the heavy oak door, ignoring the secretary, and barged into the CEO's office. Mr. Jenkins was sitting in his new leather chair. Startled, he dropped his cigar onto his expensive slacks, yelping as it burned him. "What is the meaning of this? You want me to take the fall?" My voice trembled with rage. Jenkins tried to placate me, but it was mostly dismissal. "The company is minimizing the damage. Just endure it for a bit." I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. "Tiffany is close with the higher-ups. As her senior, you didn't look after her. Now that there's trouble, the company naturally has to protect the newcomer." Jenkins' voice was low, avoiding my eyes. "Are you questioning the board's decision? Don't forget, you're an employee here." Jenkins looked nothing like the CEOs in romance novels. He was middle-aged, pot-bellied, and had a greasy smile that made me sick. "You know, to get something you have to give something. Obviously, Tiffany gave more than you." His tone was sly. "If you want the company to clear your name, fine. Accompany Mr. Zhang for the collaboration deal. Crown Hotel, Presidential Suite 3113. Dress sexy." I felt nauseous. "Aren't you afraid I'll expose all of this?" Jenkins' beady eyes narrowed. His voice dropped, threatening. You've been in this industry long enough. Either accept reality or face worse retaliation. He paused. You don't want your own Black Ops file released, do you? I left the building with heavy steps, looking defeated. It wasn't until I was in my car, door shut, that I flashed a bright smile, waving the voice recorder in my hand. I went home and logged into my long-dormant main Twitter account. After confirming the audio files were clear, I uploaded them one by one, directly countering Tiffany's interview. In the recordings, Tiffany's voice was unmistakable. Her arrogant, confident declarations were preserved perfectly. You think just anyone gets into Preston's party? We have a special relationship. He invited me personally. Don't worry, I have a way to make Preston propose publicly this time. With my looks and body, if I don't marry Rich, it's a waste. And Jenkins. The company needs a scapegoat, so you're it. The internet mob hits where we point. If you talk, don't blame us for getting nasty. The moment these dropped, it was like a nuke went off online. It instantly rocketed to the #2 trending topic. Tiffany the schemer, body doubles, sleeping with execs, the tags exploded. These topics trended for 2 full days. The only thing beating them at #1 was, naturally, the original scandal of Tiffany trapping the Pierce heir. I happily scrolled through the drama, liking several posts exposing Tiffany's past. My phone rang. It was Tiffany. Chloe. This is an invasion of privacy. I'm suing you. Her voice was shrill with hate. I remained calm. Think twice before I sue you for defamation. You want to go to court? I have plenty of time and money to play with you. I paused, then added. Worst case scenario, I retire and go home to inherit my family's business. My voice was light, taunting. Don't forget, I have a fallback plan. Instead of fighting me, you should worry about your safety. Preston Pierce's revenge is coming, isn't it? Tiffany stammered, terrified. What do you know? I laughed softly and hung up. I was prepared for this game. Tiffany didn't realize the rules had changed. As I predicted, Preston and his rich friends were just tourists in the holding cell. They were released quickly. The Pierce family's influence was an invisible hand controlling everything. When I woke up, the online narrative had shifted completely. Tiffany was being crucified. Explicit photos of her were circulating everywhere, some real, some AI fakes. The public's focus shifted entirely to Tiffany's loose private life. The entertainment industry loves to kick someone when they're down. Rival actresses hired people to dig up proof that she faked her college degree and evaded taxes. Authorities stepped in. She was blacklisted across the entire internet. The Pierce family successfully framed the entire scandal as Tiffany's personal misconduct, quietly extricating themselves. It was a cunning distraction. The internet mob was easily manipulated, and the Pierce name seemed to vanish from the conversation. Tiffany had used every dirty trick to climb the ladder, only to lose everything in less than a week. At this point, even the executives sleeping with her had to cut her loose. The agency was sinking anyway. Managers were being arrested left and right. Jenkins, facing bankruptcy, tried to grab one last cash grab. He showed Tiffany no mercy, slapping her with a multi-million-dollar breach of contract lawsuit. Tiffany had always spent money like water. She had no savings. Now, with loan sharks calling, the lawsuit debt, and the IRS demanding back taxes, she was trapped in a web of panic. She frantically sold her condo and car. The luxury bags she once treasured were sold for pennies on the dollar. Even then, it was barely enough to cover the taxes. As for the astronomical breach of contract fee, she couldn't pay it. Desperate, she went crawling back to Preston Pierce. I didn't ask what happened next. After the agency went bankrupt, I finally regained my freedom and received the casting notice I had been waiting for. The movie was filming in France. I packed my bags, ready for a new journey. As the plane cut through the clouds, I stared out the window. This role was made for me. The director was an international master. Every film he made was cinema history. Starring in this practically guaranteed an award nomination. In my last life, to help Tiffany, I handed this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to her. She had begged me, voice trembling, freshly dumped. Chloe, I really need this chance to prove myself. I don't want my fans to think I'm just a gold digger. Chloe, please. She had humbled herself into the dust. She claimed she lost love, so she needed a career to protect her. Eventually, I caved to her begging and gave up the role. I told myself it was for a friend. I tried to convince myself I was being noble. But history proved my sacrifice didn't earn gratitude, only betrayal. Selflessness is sometimes just a form of self-harm. The director had been furious. Filming had already started, so he couldn't find a replacement in time and had to accept her. The result was obvious. The movie bombed because of her stiff acting. The director's reputation took a hit, marking the only stain on his career. Yet he hadn't blamed me. He called me later to comfort me. "You are talented. If you had played the lead, this work wouldn't have been buried." Those words had been a balm to my soul. Walking onto the set again, I still felt guilt toward the director. I was terrified of disappointing him. In my past life, suppressed by the agency, I always felt inferior to Tiffany. I felt like a weed next to a rose. But I debuted earlier. I was more famous. Yet I never got the good resources. I had planned to retire, but this movie was my final wish. I wanted to breathe life into this character. Action. I took a deep breath and vanished into the story. I saw Tiffany again a week after I returned to the States. It was a sunny afternoon on Rodeo Drive. A commotion broke the peace. Tiffany was surrounded by several burly women, wives of wealthy men. Their faces were twisted with rage. Pedestrians stopped to watch. It was another classic, mistress caught in the act scene. Her makeup was smeared, hair matted, clothes torn to shreds. In the chaos, one of her implants had ruptured, leaving her chest lopsided. The crowd jeered, making her humiliation absolute. Behind her stood Preston Pierce, gripping her hair, demanding money. The former Prince of New York looked nothing like his old self. His eyes were glazed, hair filthy, clothes stained. He clutched a half-empty bottle of cheap liquor. Tiffany trembled when she saw him, trying to run. Preston yanked her back by her hair. He glared at her, breathing booze into her face. "Think you can run? You ruined everything." I had heard through the grapevine that the Pierce empire had sunk. After Preston humiliated Tiffany, she had sought revenge. Somehow, she stole confidential files from his company and sold them to a rival. It wasn't enough to destroy them alone, but it left a crack in the armor. Competitors swarmed. They gathered evidence of the father's financial crimes and handed it to the feds. Suddenly, everyone turned on them. Netizens dug up old cases, cover-ups, hit-and-runs. Worse, the Pierce family was linked to a trafficking ring involving minors. The cases were reopened. Corrupt officials were taken down. Preston's father got life in prison. The executives got decades. The company was seized by the government. The family used their last resources to claim Preston knew nothing, keeping him out of jail. But for someone like him, losing his money was worse than prison. He became a drunk and a gambler. He eventually found Tiffany, who was also hiding from debt collectors. He latched onto her like a ghost. Back on the street, the angry wives, seeing Preston's violent grip, got scared and backed off. Tiffany was shaking violently. She reached into her bag, fumbling frantically. Suddenly, something flashed cold in the sunlight. Her eyes were filled with a desperate, final resolve. Without hesitation, she plunged a knife into Preston's stomach. Blood sprayed out like a fountain, covering her. Preston's eyes went wide with disbelief. He stared at her, then slowly collapsed. Covered in blood, Tiffany stared at the body. Then she started to laugh. The laughter echoed, desolate and insane. She had snapped. Not wanting to watch the gory scene any longer, I turned around and walked away, step by step, leaving the chaos behind. I had a bright future ahead of me. The misery behind me belonged to a past life I had finally outrun. 1 year later, I stood at the Academy Awards. The red carpet stretched out like a road to glory. Flashbulbs popped like stars. I hadn't disappointed the director. The film touched millions and won critical acclaim. My performance was hailed as the peak of my career. Wearing a custom gown, I waved confidently. When the presenter announced Best Actress, my name echoed through the Dolby Theater. All the sacrifice and effort crystallized into this sweet moment. Holding the heavy golden statue, my eyes misted over. This film is my love letter to the world. I said into the microphone. It is a testament to my love for acting. It is not just the closing chapter of my past, but the starting point of my new life. I knew a new page was turning, but I would remember every moment in front of the camera. I would take this glory and walk bravely into the future. The end.